I'm delighted to welcome, it's very exciting because he's a guest in the studio, Times columnist Matthew Syed, who joins us. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia. It's good to be here.
Lovely to
face
see.
To face.
It's genuinely very exciting to see people face to face now. I was going to say, you've got another book. You write a lot of books. You are very, I think you write books faster than I read them these days. But you've got I just think it sounds brilliant, this book. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I know from speaking to you and reading your previous books, I know I'm going to agree with every single word. Dare to Be You, it's called. And it's a book actually aimed at children. Tell us what it's about.
It is. So I started writing for kids in 2018. First book was called You Are Awesome. This one, Dare to Be You. I'll tell you what triggered it, really. One of the things that happened during lockdown is my daughter Evie, she's 7 years old, quite bright spark. And I've been taken to the habit of putting the radio on during breakfast, just on in the background. Yep. And at one point, Evie said to me, "Dad, has my life been ruined?" I said, well, why'd you say that? And then it suddenly hit me that day after day, she's been hearing commentators on the radio say that COVID, which, by the way, has been difficult. It's been tough for children. It's been tough for parents. It's been tough for teachers. It's been tough for society. It's been a difficult year and an unusual year in all sorts of different ways. But they keep saying it's shattered children's lives. It has disrupted and devastated their well-being. They will never be able to catch up the lost ground. They'll never be able to recover the lost ground. And she's been imbibing all of these messages. And she said to me spontaneously, has it ruined my life? And I don't want to diminish in any way how difficult it has been. I don't want to diminish the fact there are mental health concerns and other things of that kind. But the tone, to me, is all wrong.
I have to say, this is something you could have been listening to our show, because genuinely that's one of the things that I've really fought against throughout the lockdown. I was working from home like many, many millions of others throughout it, and had the virus very early on before we even went into lockdown, was trying to look at the positives, not to whitewash things, not to sugarcoat things, not to pretend things aren't terrible. A number of the regular guests on the show, in fact, Dave Chorney, who's been on all this morning, his father died of coronavirus. I've had a friend who's died of coronavirus. We are really aware of how difficult this has been. But this need to try and look on the bright side and see, put things in perspective. Yeah. And one of the things I remember always saying was, look, this is terrible. We're at home. But you know what? I'm not sending my husband off to the trenches. He's not sitting there thinking at any moment tomorrow I'm going to have to go over, with just my bayonet and get bombed by the Germans. We are being forced to sit at home and watch Netflix, right, and take a cut in pay. This is not the worst thing that's ever happened to a human being.
And think about the future. These young people are going to leave school or college or university, and they're going to be faced with a world that is changing very fast. Yeah. Industries are being disrupted fast. I write in print journalism. Who knows if that will exist in 5 years' time? And that's going to be the state of the world, changing at a faster clip, disruption, industries being destroyed. The people who are going to really thrive in that world are those who are comfortable with change, who can cope with uncertainty. And if we try and constantly insinuate that change is devastating and terrible and negative, we're never going to equip them with the resilience and adaptability that I think is the strongest asset they could have in the modern world, probably even more important than a diploma or a degree. And so what the book is all about is trying to instill these messages in young people. Changes that have happened in our history, but that we have coped with. Changes that have happened in my life that I have dealt with. I've also, by the way, there's also a chapter on anxiety. And if you're feeling worried or anxious, or if you think you have a mental health issue, talk about it. Be open about it. But I've balanced it, Julia, with other messages, and I want to empower young people.
This is the key thing. The amount of times we've had mental health charities on talking about, 50% of young people have a mental health problem. You think, well, no, and I always counter that with, no, they don't. That is simply not the real world experience. 50% of children at any one time may feel anxious or low or worried. These are normal, in the vast majority of young people and older people, these are normal human emotions. If you didn't at any point feel anxious or low or worried during the lockdown, then you're a better person. I mean, I'm as positive as they can be. And my whole family, my daughter is very, very positive, my husband, every now and then, and we tend to do it on different days. Every few weeks, we would all have this is really getting me down now. Yeah. And we had those moments, and we had a group hug. We made a nice lunch. We went out for a walk, and we just tried to sort of look on the positives. And it's really important that we don't just say that this is a mental health problem because you're having a normal human emotion.
I think this is of fundamental significance in our world at the moment. One of the stories I tell in the book is in my final year of primary school. What year is that, Julia? You've got a 13. So I was 11 years old, and it was Joseph in the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. And I had quite a decent part. I was Jacob, Joseph's dad. And I was really nervous, anxious about being in front, not just of my peer group, school, my classmates, but also the parents were coming in to watch. So think about that.
That's one of the reasons they do school performances.
Exactly, Julia. Imagine if somebody said, "Oh, well, hang on, you're nervous, you're anxious, you're reflecting on this before you go to bed. Well, you definitely need to have some medical help." That's wrong. Yeah. My father said, "Matthew, this is completely normal to feel anxious. When in life, when you come on a radio show, if you have to give a talk or you have to do a job interview, nerves are perfectly natural.
And
by
they're
the way,
actually
Julia,
part of why you perform well, because
correct.
They get everything, your blood moving and your brain
functioning. By
functioning.
the way, if you insulate children from that, if you say, "Oh no, well, you never go in front of a group of people to speak if you get nervous," you're never going to develop the skill and the confidence and the coping strategy. So,
and this is the stuff the best schools do. They get the kids from reception onwards.
Yeah, but here's the thing:
things.
is a lot of young people. This is one of the reasons I started this children's book series. Is a lot of teachers and parents were saying, "You know what? Is it a good thing to say to my children, don't do something that makes you anxious?" And the answer to that is it depends what it is. If it's walking along a cliff face where you might fall off, then yes, it's a good idea to stay away from that. But if it's something that can really help you in life, you should confront those. By the way, so I gave this performance as Jacob, and I did fluff a line. And I came off and I wouldn't say humiliated, Julia. I was a bit embarrassed. And my father said to me, again, he's a great guy. He was Pakistani born, really an ambitious person, but also someone with great common sense. And he said to me, "That's one of the best lessons you will have, because making mistakes is a part of life too. Exactly. And you have to deal with it. And next time you're invited, I make mistakes all the time. We've fluffed a couple of lines since we've been talking this morning. That's okay. And young people shouldn't be devastated by that.
But this is it. There's something about perfection. I can remember a teacher telling my daughter, I was just sitting there crying about writing out some poem or something and saying, "But it has to be perfect." I said, "Nothing you do ever has to be perfect, and it never will be perfect, and that's okay. I don't even need you," I said, and I've reiterated this, "to you to do the best you can every day. I don't even like that as an instruction. Don't do the best you can every single day." Because that you're going to be worn out by the time you're 7 years old. Yeah. The pressure we put on young people. But what I find also is interesting, you talked about self-esteem, and lots of children who struggle with low self-esteem. One of the things that I think we've got wrong now is this idea of telling every child, "Oh, you're amazing, you can be anything you want." No, they can't. No. Most people are pretty average. We're pretty average, and I can't be an astronaut. I can't be a ballerina. I can probably vaguely pass muster as a radio host on a good day, but there are loads of jobs I can't do, and there are loads of things I will never achieve. I can't, because I'm really, really average or poor at those things. Do we not need to be a bit more honest with children and just say, you should have the self-esteem appropriate to your abilities and your talent, and this idea that every child should be a star, and every child can be anything they want to be. We are selling them a lie. No, you know what? You may well end up stacking shelves in a supermarket, and there's nothing to be embarrassed or ashamed about that. That's a good, honest living, and you're doing really useful, as we've discovered during the lockdown, essential work, and you should be proud of that.
Well, I ought to say my mother stacked shelves at Asda and did it brilliantly, and with huge
chopped
commitment.
onions in a takeaway. Nothing wrong with that.
But there's a huge amount of unpacking that. But there's one thing I think is really important, and psychologists have studied this, is what they call the curse of perfectionism. I think social media may be partly to blame. Yeah. A lot of people, when they're posting, they try and make their lives look perfect, particularly on Facebook.
I do the opposite usually.
Yeah, right. Airbrush photos and what a wonderful holiday we had. And I think sometimes it's easy for young people to infer that life is about looking and acting in a perfect way.
And that everyone else is having a perfect existence.
Yeah, but think of the consequence of that. If it's all about perfection, why would I ever take a risk? Yeah. Why would I try something new? Why would I embrace change? Because when you try something new, you're not going to be perfect the first time. You're going to fail, you're going to mess up. Yeah. That's part of how things evolve. And I think that young people are not taking sensible risks that are a part of what it is to grow and become stronger.
And bearing in mind, virtually every successful person in the world, people admire all these multi-millionaires and billionaires, the Jeff Bezoses or whatever, all of them will talk about the failures they've had along the way.
So I talk in the book about James Dyson.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether you have a Dyson vacuum cleaner, but I do know. Well, there we are. But it's not a perfect
one,
by the way.
Expensive.
Exactly. But by the way, sells a lot, which is why he's worth a lot of money. But he failed 5,127 times. You look to Silicon Valley, all these great companies, they have something called beta testing where they get a product out into the market, they find out what the inevitable bugs and deficiencies are so they can address them.
Yeah.
In other words, it's about failing fast. And I think that if we have an aversion to failure, if we're incapable of taking a risk that might lead to failure, we're never going to do the things that help us to grow. So young people, I want them to hear stuff like this. You touch on the other issues that seem to have become the incessant focus of the public debate on young people and young people's development. If alongside that we talk about adaptability, about resilience, how wonderful change can sometimes be, the opportunities that it can provide, I think young people are then getting a balanced set of messages. And moreover, on that point you made, it is a subtle point, but it is worth making. We mustn't medicalise normal human emotion.
Ups and downs of normal daily life. It means you're a human being, not a robot. Dare to be You. It's out now. It's in September. It's aimed at the children to read, or for the parents to read?
Children. It's for children. So it's written with lots of illustrations and stories, a tiny bit of science in there too. All the stuff that we've talked about actually, and it's sort of 8 to 14.
Absolutely brilliant. I'm going to be getting it. Thank you very much
Thank you,
indeed.